animated scary movie.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
That the power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Here's Johnny! I see dead people.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
It's showtime.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Terror Talks. I'm your host, Jeremy. And on today's episode, we've got a little bit of a twofer for you. Half of this episode is going to be sort of catching up, filling you in on some things that we were a little bit behind on. And the other half of it is going to be brand new news that is coming fresh out of both Universal Studios Orlando and Universal Studios Hollywood. So we're not going to waste any time at all. We are going to jump right in. First off with our freshest new news, which is the speculation map that has recently been released by our friends over at Horror Night Nightmares. That's right, they have released speculation map version 3 for both Universal Studios Orlando and Universal Studios Hollywood. So we're going to break down both speculation maps for you, and they're both very interesting. One has changed more than another, and so that's kind of interesting to see. Some interesting things have come off. Some interesting things have gone on. Some heartbreakers are gone, but some not so heartbreakers have stuck around. So, lots to unravel. So let's start off with our flagship studios, which is Universal Studios Orlando, and their Halloween Horror Nights 31. So, we're going to start off with House A, which is now looking to be Soundstage 22. So before we dive in, we do want to mention that a lot of the houses are in completely different places than they were last year. This is due to a lot of construction that is happening out there at Universal Studios Orlando right now. So two of the houses that typically are on the speculation map are not there anymore. On the first two speculation maps, we saw a house, the Men in Black tent house, which, as everyone knows, is usually in the Men in Black queue, and that is where Welcome to Scary Horror in the Heartland was during HHN 30. That is not going to be there, nor is the house that typically is in the Shrek queue, because one, Shrek does not exist any longer at that park, and two, they are doing a lot of construction, so the Shrek house is no longer going to be a house at this event. That was where Case Files Unearthed the Legendary Truth was during HHN 30. But there are two new places. We have found a lot of permits that point in the direction of where these houses will be. So these new locations do seem pretty concrete, but we have not heard any official announcements about anything. There is one we know for sure where it's going to be, but further than that, we don't know a whole lot. So this map is based purely on the new information that we are getting out from Universal Studios Orlando. Maybe this is another scare zone turned house. I, for one, would be kind of curious to see what would happen with this, because witches can be creepy, and it's a great sort of tie-in to Halloween with this being HHN 31. It really is kind of perfect to do this really nice Halloween type theme, because witches are just a classic Halloween staple. So I'm very curious what we might see. Would we be going through sort of a Salem witch trial scenario? Would we be seeing rather than Salem witch trials, would we be seeing the typical kind of goblin-esque, more witch sort of deal? There's a lot of routes they could go, so I'm very curious as to what we may get with this. It's not the scariest thing in the world to me, but then again, it doesn't always have to be scary for it to be good either. We have had some really nice houses that weren't necessarily scary, but they were phenomenal, beautiful, amazing, and I have a good feeling about this if this one stays on. So I'm curious if it sticks around. It definitely would make sense, like I said, to tie into the whole HHN 31 Halloween type theme. But we can only wait and find out. So this actually replaced Stranger Things. So there was on Speculation Map version 2 a spot for Stranger Things in House A, and so now it looks like that is gone. So I can hear some people already groaning about this. I have not, at the time of this recording, I have not yet watched the entirety of Stranger Things Part 4, the first half of it, but I do plan on finishing at some point very, very soon. So we'll see when I get to it, but it definitely lends itself very nicely to a Horror Nights house from what I can tell so far. Up next, we have House B, which appears to be Soundstage 23A, I believe. So this would be roughly where Bride of Frankenstein Lives was last year. And this is rumored to be the Evil Dead. So this is a very interesting selection because the Evil Dead has sort of been jumping on and jumping back off of the Spec Map so far. It was originally on Spec Map 1, and it was, I believe, either a tent house or it was one of the parade building houses. And then on Spec Map 2, it completely went away altogether. And so now it is back in a soundstage, no less. So it has upgraded from either or, whether it was a parade building or a tent house. It has upgraded to a soundstage, so there's a lot of fun stuff they could do. We have seen Evil Dead at the event before. I personally have not seen it. I've never been there and gotten to witness it. But they have had it at the event before in the form of the remake that I believe was in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks, in the comments below. We had it there, and I believe we also had Ash versus the Evil Dead at the event as well. But we have not seen the original Evil Dead, which, quite frankly, is what I'm hoping this is. I have heard some talk that there is Evil Dead Rising that's coming out. It's a new Evil Dead. I'm not sure if it's a film, TV sort of deal. But it's some sort of Evil Dead, play on the Evil Dead. And it is coming to the world very soon. I believe later this year, actually. And I'm hoping it's not that. I can't imagine why it would be. It doesn't seem like it would make a lot of sense to release that and then have a house based on it, especially if it's not well received. So I'm hoping that this is the original Evil Dead. I'm hoping maybe it's a sort of collage of the first two. Maybe if you want to throw some scenes from Army of Darkness in there, I wouldn't be opposed to it. If it can be done tastefully and well, we don't want it to be the comedy house, because there's some really grotesque moments from that film franchise, and we definitely don't want to have too many laughs in there. It's definitely could be a very scary house. So I'm hoping that is what we get with this. I really hope this one sticks around. So like I said, it's sort of jumping around, so it's very good to see it back. So all we can do is wait at this point, though, unfortunately. Up next, we have Halloween. So now that we're here at Halloween, we'll talk about Halloween. This is a confirmed house. It is here. It is coming. Halloween. It returns this year. So how fitting that this year is HHN 31 and it is going to return. We're going to go back to Haddonfield, 1978. What a better way to celebrate a Halloween year than with the man of Halloween himself, Michael Myers. Universal has officially announced this house. So we are very, very excited about this. And we are going to let you guys have a look at the trailer right now. And then we will talk briefly about it. So here we go. Halloween.
Are you serious? Why would you go in there? Don't go in there. Oh, really? Ooh, I guess this is the part where the boogeyman gets me. Not real.
Step into the horror classic, Halloween, only at Universal's Halloween Horror Nights.
So in the write-up about it, this is what Universal had to say. Gather your friends and visit Haddonfield, Illinois, where Michael Myers is about to don his mask and embark on his first brutal spree. Silent, merciless, relentless. He's the embodiment of pure evil. You don't want to go alone as you go back to where it all began. This year, step into the original 1978 horror classic, Halloween. So this is one we are super excited about because it is a house that we never got to experience at Halloween Horror Nights because it was one that appeared before we ever got to officially start coming regularly. So when we saw the announcement for this, we were just beyond excited. I cannot wait to see what they do with it. I will say I think many of us were expecting the 2018 and 2020 renditions of it. And so it's a little disappointing we didn't get to see that. But I did read somewhere somebody basically said you have to go back to where it all began to end it. And how fitting for HHN, we're going to go back to where it all began, Haddonfield, 1978. And then in October, we're going to get the finale of the new trilogy, Halloween Ends. So that's very exciting. There's not a whole lot of information that we have learned at this time about what the house will be. We have heard some things, of course, from our friends over in Hollywood. John Murdy answered some questions for anybody who had them regarding the house. And this is just a little bit of information we have about it. Please remember that, he can only say so much without giving things away. And also, he can only speak on behalf of the Hollywood houses. He cannot speak on behalf of the Orlando houses as he is not employed by Universal Studios Orlando. He is with Universal Studios Hollywood. And as a professional courtesy, and he makes sure to say this as well, he can only speak on behalf of Hollywood. So this is what the information we have so far. So it's going to be based on the 2015 house with some new twists along the way. So one of the last times we saw Halloween featured at an event was in 2015. That was when the original house was. And so they're saying it's going to be based on that. So the facade is the Myers house from 78 with a new element that the team is R&Ding right now on the projection side. So I assume there'll be some sort of interesting projection mapping sort of deal in the Hollywood version. I'm not sure what we will get in the Orlando version. But certainly, if it is right on the speculation map for Orlando, that means we'll see it in a soundstage, which means the sky is really the limit. So some questions about the facade effect. Yes and no. This is one of my original ideas that still has to be tested to make sure it will work. It's not been done at either park. So there is clearly a facade effect that we have not seen done before, and it's an idea that Mr. Murdy himself has conjured up. There will be some new scenes from the 2015 version. It's based on the 2015 one, but with some changes along the way. So that means we're going to see a lot of the same stuff, but we might see a lot of different stuff too. There will not be any Halloween 3 references. There will be no young Michael scare actors. One of the questions was, will there be a Pepper's ghost effect used for the hedge scene? I'm assuming that means when Michael is standing in the hedge. And his response was, can you do Halloween without it? Improving our Pepper's ghost effect from what was done in 2015. So that's basically a resounding yes. Ghost Michael will be in the house. The closet scene will be in the house. Michael versus Loomis in the Doyle house will be there. So 3 positives right there. This is not the password house. I do not know what the password house means in Hollywood. So if anybody does happen to know what that is, please let me know in the comments below. I'm very curious. There will not be any Smith's Grove Sanitarium, but it is alluded to. You will see what happened to Annie regarding her death, but it will be in a slightly different reveal. So that's kind of interesting. There will be scents and there will be scrims. So a lot of really interesting stuff from the man, the myth, the legend, John Murdy himself. Obviously, he can't give us all of the details, but it is shaping up to be a really interesting house, at least in Hollywood. I imagine over here in Orlando that it will be very similar, or at the very least semi-similar, because I know the two tend to vary in large ways. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that it was spoken briefly at a major event that happened here in Orlando recently by Mike Aiello and the team. There was a panel there at an event called Spooky Empire. If I'm not mistaken, they may have mentioned this house, but we did not hear about it. So I don't want to speak falsely or anything like that. So we'll just leave it at that. But we are very excited to see what we're going to get with this house. I am beyond excited to see Michael return to the event. And I think it's going to be a great time. So that's Halloween. Then we have House D continuing our way around the park. Oh, by the way, Halloween is rumored to be where HHN Icons... No, I'm sorry. It's rumored to be where Texas Chainsaw was, which was in Soundstage 23B, so the second half of Soundstage 23. Then we move around to House D, which is El Chupacabra. So from what I have heard, from what I have read, this was an original house. It still is an original house that was rumored to be at the event, or was supposed to actually be at the event many, many years ago, back when the Transformers building was a Halloween Horror Nights building. And then construction began on that, and they had to gut it, tear it down. They weren't able to do this house, unfortunately, or something to that degree the story goes. So this is one of those houses that is sort of sat in limbo if it does come to fruition, which this is the third time we've seen it on the spec map, so I think it's sticking around. It's one of the few that will hang around. But it's one that has been sort of in limbo, and we hadn't seen the light of day yet. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Universal and the Horror Nights team bring it to life finally after all these years. I think it's a great concept. It's a great sort of legend to play with. I feel like they can do some really interesting stuff with that. I envision a lot of outdoor type scenes in this. You know, I imagine a lot of animal-esque creatures coming at you, because the chupacabra is a sort of animal in Mexican folklore, I believe. So I feel like they can do some really great things with this that can really scare the crap out of some people. And I'm hoping that's the case. I'm hoping this could be potentially one that will actually make me a little uncomfortable and scare the bejeebers out of me. I'm hoping maybe with it being very animal-esque that this could be a more grotesque house even. So I'm very curious. I can't wait to see what the creative team does with it, and this is actually one I'd be very excited to see stick around. Then moving on down the line to House E. Oh, by the way, El Chupacabra is rumored to be where Revenge of the Tooth Fairy was last year at HHN 30. So that is Soundstage 24A, I believe. And so then we have Dead Man's Wharf, which this is another one that has sort of been hanging around. It appears to be more than confirmed because we have seen it on so many spec maps. So it seems to be one that's going to hang around, getting very much the fog vibes. I've heard that said by several people. This is another sort of scare zone turned house. So I will say that'll be kind of interesting if we basically have two of those, especially if the witch house that we were talking about earlier is a scare zone turned house. It'll be interesting to see if Dead Man's Wharf is also a scare zone turned house, because that'd be two at one event. And to my knowledge, I've never heard of that being done. But I could be wrong. I've only been going for a year now, so I am not quite as in on it as many people are. But it could still be very exciting. I heard a lot of fantastic things about the whole Dead Man's Wharf scare zone. I saw some pictures. It is a gorgeous scare zone. I love anything to do with water personally, and I feel like they could do some great things with this. Like I said, very much the fog vibes. That's what I'm getting from it. I really feel like, it could be a very foggy house, a very dark house, lots of blues and green tints throughout, very dark, very ominous. So this would be one I'd be very excited to go through as well. So I kind of hope this one sticks around too, and I'm excited to see what Universal does with it. I think, like I said, I think this one is another sort of done deal, because this is the third spec map it has survived, and the only thing it's done is it's jumped around a couple places. I believe it's moved sort of around the map But other than that, it seems all but confirmed at this point. We just wait on Universal to give us the final green light for that one. So now we have the bottom row of the Orlando spec map, starting us off with the horrors of Blumhouse, The Black Phone, and Freaky. Hey Terror Talk fans, this is Jeremy from the future, giving you a quick audio update in the middle of this episode that you're listening to now. So at this point of the video, you've probably heard me mention the next house on our speculation map is the Horrors of Blumhouse featuring Freaky and the Black Phone. At the time of recording this episode, we did not have an official announcement, but as fate would have it, literally mere days after recording, maybe even a day after, we did get the official announcement that the Horrors of Blumhouse featuring Freaky and the Black Phone would in fact be coming to both Universal Studios Orlando and Universal Studios Hollywood. So I just wanted to give that quick clarification in case you listen to this. We do know that it is coming. As of the day of recording this episode, we did not know, so you will be hearing it as if we don't know what's coming, but in reality, we actually do. So be on the lookout for an episode very, very soon where we will actually talk about both films and our expectations for this house. All right, guys, back to your regularly scheduled episode. So this is one that has remained from Spec Map V2, but it was not on the original Spec Map version 1. So that's kind of interesting. I'm very interested to see what this is going to be, what it could shape up to be. I can say it's not one of my favorites. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. I did enjoy the film Freaky. I sat down and watched it when I saw that this was speculated on version 2, and then The Black Phone, as of the day I'm recording this, has not yet come out and hit theaters yet, but is shaping up to be an amazing thriller type flick, and a lot of people are already singing its praises. I believe I read somewhere that's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is almost unheard of in my opinion, in my expertise or history. I've never heard of Rotten Tomatoes giving anything 100% unless it was like that good. So I'm very curious about these. I don't know how the two will pair. It's a very interesting pair for a Horror Nights house, and I have heard many a time that the Horrors of Blumhouse houses are not what one would call amazing by any means. They're not anybody's favorite. So I'm kind of curious to see what we're going to get with that. But I'm hoping it actually turns out to be a good house. Would it be the worst thing in the world if it didn't stick around? No, I wouldn't be particularly upset. But, anything could happen. So, like I said, I wouldn't be particularly sad if it left. But at the same time, I guess after I go and see The Black Phone, if it is an amazing film, then I could be really upset if this goes away. So this one is rumored to be in the Fast and Furious location, the house that is being built in the Fast and Furious queue, or not in the queue, but like right outside the queue. But supposedly part of the house is being used, or part of the queue is being used for the house. So that would be kind of interesting. I'm very curious to see if this one comes to fruition and what becomes of it. So only time will tell. Just have to wait and see. Moving right along, going all the way around to the other side of the Universal Lagoon, we come to our big tent houses. These are, in my opinion, at least last year, these were two of the best houses you could have gone through. The tent houses are great because they're very claustrophobic. They're a lot more tight corners. Just everything about it looks fantastic. The scenery, oh my God, is absolutely amazing. Amazing scenery. So I'm very, very curious as to if these two will stick around and what we're going to get with them. So first up, we have House G, which is where Wicked Growth Realm of the Pumpkin was last year, and that is Bug House. This is an original. So Bug House, it is exactly what it sounds like, as far as we can tell. We have not heard anything official, no announcements, but it definitely is intriguing. It's definitely one that I think a lot of people are going to get creeped out by because everyone has this overwhelming phobia of bugs, whether it be, your simple bugs like ants and worms and roaches and that sort of thing, to spiders and, whatever have you. I mean, there's so many you could play with. So many could come into play here. And what makes it even better is this is a tent house, which means it's going to be claustrophobic. It's going to mean you're going to be tight spaces, and tight spaces with mysterious bugs crawling around. Lots of room to get some really great scares out of people. I imagine lots of like puffs of air at people's feet, kind of like how they did the spiders in Shrek when it was still around. I could see that happening. I'm not sure what else could be done. I mean, my mind is racing, but I don't have a whole lot of ideas. That's just one of the few I can think of. But I can definitely hear that. A lot of audio, maybe, like insect feet, legs crawling across the floor. That could be really creepy, really make the hair on your neck, on your arms stand up. So that could be a great house. It could be one that could really scare the crap out of people. And quite frankly, I think that's one that would actually get a rise out of me. And it would probably end up being the best house, quite frankly. And this one is another house that has survived both speculation maps so far. I don't think the name will be Bug House, but it certainly will, I think, be on the final event map. So, Bug House. Then we have the most random fly ball from left field here. House H, which is the other Sprung Tent house. This is where Puppet Theater Captive Audience was. And they are calling it Seeds of Extinction 2. This has literally been 3 different things already on both speculation maps. On Spec Map 2, it was rumored to be Wicked Growth, Realm of the Pumpkin 2. And then before that, it was rumored to be Evil Dead. So, lots of changing around here. Lots and lots of changing. I think it was Evil Dead. I feel like I'm wrong about that. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it was Underground Creatures. Underground Creatures. So, it has not been the same in this house once. Each spec map has been different. I don't know. I've never seen Seeds of Extinction, but if my memory serves correctly and what little bit I do know about Halloween Horror Nights, this is a sort of pumpkin house sort of deal. And because of that, that would sort of fit in with the overall theme of this being HHN 31, a Halloween sort of thing. But of course, Wicked Growth Realm of the Pumpkin would have done the exact same thing. So it's very interesting which one we may or may not get. Like I said, I don't know much about Seeds of Extinction. From what I understand, it was a fabulous house back at 28. But it does seem a little soon for them to pull out a sequel like that of an original house. They've done sequels to original houses before, but it just seems like that's a really fast turnaround. So a part of me wonders if this was just something like, hey, let's mess with them a little bit. And it very well could be that, or it very well could be the house that we get. Unfortunately, and without an official announcement, that's all we got to go off of. Moving around to our final 2 houses, the parade building houses. First, I'm gonna sort of go out of order here. I'm gonna jump to House J because I want to save House I for last, because there's a lot to talk about with that. House J is the Weekend house. It's rumored to be a house based upon The Weeknd and The Weeknd's music. I don't listen to The Weeknd, but from what I've seen, they have a lot of horror imagery in their videos. So that already, to me, just shouts Halloween Horror Nights houses. And this is another house that has stood the test of time now on all 3 spec maps. It has been in the same place on all 3 spec maps. It is holding on like a champ. And to throw some more fuel to the fire here, we have basically more or less had the singer-songwriter, The Weeknd, posting on social media different things that allude to this being a confirmed house. So I believe this one will definitely happen. It's just a matter of time of when they're gonna announce it. It's not one that I'm particularly crazy about, but it's not one that I hate either. Because I mean, it's interesting. They were supposed to have a Billie Eilish house during HHN 30. I will say at the end of the day, I'm very glad they didn't, because if they'd have had it, then we wouldn't have gotten Case Files, and that was one of my favorite houses at HHN 30. So this is sort of Universal's second chance to try with the whole music-themed house, and I'm here for it. I'm willing to see what they do with it. I'm not going to critique it or criticize it, before seeing what they can do. So if they can make it good, and well, it's not their first music house. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say their first music house, but it's their first more pop music house. Whereas, back in the day, they used to do Alice Cooper and Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, that sort of deal. This is a almost different genre of music. And so because of that, I'm curious to see what they do with it. And like I said, I don't listen to The Weeknd, so I'm very curious as to how this will play. And again, this will be in one of the parade buildings. Judging from the map, it would appear that this is going to be where Hill House was, I believe. Yeah, that's what I'm going with, Hill House. Then finally, we have House I. Like I said, we're backtracking a little here. This was the first house that was announced at the event. It's one that we are particularly excited about, and this is called Universal Monsters Legends Collide. So this is an exciting house for us. We are over the moon about this. This is what the write-up says. If you thought one Universal monster was scary, how about 3? Better summon your Scream Squad, because you're about to get caught in the middle of an epic battle between the Wolfman, Dracula, and the Mummy, together for the first time ever. Their mission? To find the amulet that will break their curse, and they'll destroy anyone who gets in their way. Already pumped. Let's do it. This is going to be great. I'm not going to say too much more. I want you guys to take a look at the trailer. Have a listen to this trailer if you're listening to it or if you're watching it, whichever have you. Enjoy this trailer, and we'll be right back, and we'll talk about it.
I'm telling you, you missed out.
I'll come out next time, but I'll see you later on tonight.
Just text me.
Bye.
Universal Monsters Legends Collide. Only at Universal's Halloween Horror Nights.
Okay, so this is a house that we are over the moon about. So we've got some information both from John Murdy over in Hollywood, and we have some very, very brief, and I say really brief information from Mike Aiello here in Universal Studios Orlando. In fact, I'll go ahead and just say what little bit of brief information we have from him. One is it is supposed to be the longest house this year, which is very interesting because it's going to be in the parade building. That is confirmed as well. It's going to be in the parade building, I believe, where Hill House was. It's either where Hill House was or where Beetlejuice was. So that's kind of interesting that the parade building is going to be the longest house this year. We are getting, and we'll read about this in the John Murdy notes as well, the two houses are going to be a part 1, part 2 sort of house. So on one coast is part 1, and on the other coast is part 2. Universal Orlando is getting part 1. That I'm a little gutted by that, because I'm like, that means we're not going to get the ending. It's going to end in this way, and it's going to be like, well, now I want to go to the other house, and you can't just buckle up and go to the other house. Unfortunately, it's not a drive around the corner. It's across the country. So smart on Universal. They found a way to make you want to go to both. That was a very good marketing strategy. So yeah, that is pretty much all we know at this point for Orlando. At least all that I know about it. I imagine this is going to be a great house because Universal Monsters, they have been going strong at the park for the past couple years now. So I believe this is going to be great on both sides. In Hollywood, they did Classic Monsters back in 28. In 29, they did Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. And then in 30, well, technically they don't go by this number system. I'm just using it this way. But during the year that was last year, they did Bride of Frankenstein Lives, and Universal Orlando did the Monsters, basically an anthology house, and then they did Bride of Frankenstein Lives as well. So the Monsters are getting a lot of representation at these Orlando events, and I'm so glad for that. And they've got such a great look. The team does so good. So I am very excited about this. I will say that Mr. Aiello did show a lot of images of this house. Well, I say a lot. Apparently, he submitted like 20 of them, and they said you could show 5 at the Spooky Empire event. So he was part of the HHN panel at that event, and he did show a couple of photos. Nothing that really gives anything away at all. So I have no problem sharing them if I can find them, but they're pointless. There's nothing to them. I think one was a picture of like the dig site that you enter. One and the rest of them were like hieroglyphics on a wall. Like it was so bare bones. Like they are keeping it under lock and key. So I have a really good feeling about this house because they're keeping it that lock and key. This is going to be a great house. So these are some notes from John Murdy. So the concept came up with while he was finishing Bride. Again, this is a 2-part story, so it's a collaboration between both coasts. He had Drac versus Mummy, and the other guys had Wolfman versus Mummy. So they collaborated the story together. It takes place in London. Frankenstein will not be a part of this maze. Between the 3 monsters, there will be equal scenes and appearances. The Limehouse district of Thames was like that Amazon warehouses are today. Shipping capital of the world. Dracula's coffin arrives by boat in the 31 film. Mummy's expedition was sponsored by British Museum in 32 film. It was already part of the canon, so that's just sort of the lore of how everything fits together here. The maze over there will be in the Mummy queue. It goes to different locations, all within London. There will be some Easter eggs. There will be some verses in some scenes, so that's all 3 against each other. Again, this was a collaboration between each park telling a different story. And the look of the characters was established in 2018, but there are some new pieces that are going to show up for the Mummy, at least over in Hollywood. Dracula's coffin arrives in London like the 31 film, so the experience is based in London, so there will not be any Dracula's castle. It will not be segmented like Titans. It's an original story taking cues from the films. The ending is a surprise, but not what you're thinking. Dracula never travels alone, needs someone to deal with his coffin. There will be face-to-face encounters with Dracula. The Mummy is a big part of the story, particularly something called the Amulet of Ra, which is used to reanimate him, kind of like the Tana leaves or Scroll of Thoth in the film series. It's our invention based on Egyptian mythology. What films inspired the maze? The obvious 3, but also the Mummy sequels of the 40s. Everything else was historical research from that period in London. He loves that it's their story that expands on what the films did, but is still rooted in that world. Some cool new effects were created to help tell that story. There's some really cool special effects being R&D'd for this. Not all of Dracula's forms will be in the maze. The Amulet of Ra, so this is going to be an interesting little gadget. It's an LED programmable gadget that will sync with show audio. And he says he's going to steal one of these when they're done, but don't tell his special effects guy. So that's really cool. Hollywood is going to be part 2 of the story. Apparently that Hollywood one is going to have a pre-show video. So I guess that is going to be for those who can't make it to part 1. So that's kind of the sad part. You could do a pre-show video, but you can't do a post-show video. So it really works in their favor. They can, Hollywood can still sort of get the full experience, whereas Orlando might be not so much. And also, this is not the password maze. Again, I have no idea what the password maze in Hollywood is. This is not the maze Murdy was referring to with the wallpaper. And this one goes to 11. You do have to consider pacing, build-up, etc. So this is going to be a great house. I can feel it. I'm excited for it. It is going to be absolutely phenomenal. So I cannot wait to see what we get with this. Now, jumping over to Universal Studios Hollywood. Now, before anybody freaks out, just know we're not done with Orlando, but I want to jump over to the houses over in Hollywood to go through that. This map has not really changed at all. The only thing that has changed is Halloween is now on the map, and it has taken the place of American Werewolf in London. So what we have so far in Hollywood is Candyman, which is supposed to be in the Waterworld queue. The Evil Dead, which is supposed to be in the Walking Dead location. La Llorona, which will be in the Parisian Courtyard. This one, we have already seen the structure go up. It is the same as it was back in 11 or 12 when they did the La Llorona maze here at Hollywood. So La Llorona's coming. They just haven't announced it yet. D is Scarecrow, which is the Curious George tent. The facade for this looks absolutely beautiful. I love this facade. It is my favorite facade that Hollywood has right now. Wow, 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 wow. I cannot talk about it enough. It is so amazing. E is Halloween. This is Curious George Tent 2, and we have seen the facade structure for the Myers house, and it already looks like the Myers house now, and so we know that's where it's going to be now. Then we have F, which is Universal Monsters Legends Collide, music by Slash. This will be behind the Mummy queue, or part of the Mummy queue, over in that area of the park. Then we have G, which is The Weeknd, rumored to be on Soundstage 29, which is back behind Transformers. This is where The Exorcist was last year. And then we have Killer Clowns from Outer Space behind Soundstage 29. This is a new location. They have not put a house up behind Soundstage 29. So the fact that they're going to add this house, and we've already seen a lot of construction happening, and we've seen parts of the tent, so we're almost 110,000% positive this will be Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and it will definitely be there. But it's pretty interesting to see that they're going the extra mile to add another location for a maze. And then finally we have the Terror Tram with the theme Hollywood Harry. That's I, so that's the Terror Tram. I don't know much about Hollywood Harry or anything like that, so couldn't tell you anything. But yeah, so those are the houses for both coasts. Lots of really, really neat things going on there. So we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to talk about the scare zones in Orlando, the shows in Orlando, the shows in Hollywood, the scare zones that don't even exist yet in Hollywood. And then there's a big announcement coming out of another Universal park that we're going to talk about right at the end, at the tail end. So stick around. You're going to want to hear it. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for more content to listen to? Check out our friends at the New Age Philosophers podcast featuring our very own co-host, Brooke. Join them as they discuss topics ranging from philosophy, cryptids, conspiracies, and so much more. No topic is off the table. Just remember to keep an open mind, keep discussing, and don't stop thinking. If you're looking for other interesting content, be sure to give our friends at Gather by the Ghostlight a visit. A theatrical experience podcast. Join them as they gather and read stories from a variety of genres around the Ghostlight, your personal campfire. No matter what you are looking for, both are sure to provide you a fun, informative, and entertaining experience. Check them out today and let them know the Terror Talks sent you.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, on this episode of the Terror Talks. Before the breaks, we covered Universal Studios Orlando's Halloween Horror Nights 31 Spec Map version 3, and then Halloween Horror Night Hollywood version 3 speculation map. We covered the houses for both. Now we're going to talk about the scare zones. So in Hollywood, I'll just go ahead and say it. They're all unknown. There are no scare zone announced. We don't know what we're going to get, but they're saying there's only going to be 3, which is kind of a bummer. I still am pulling for the day that they will make Hogsmeade a full-out scare zone, because it literally, Death Eaters, Dementors, come on, it's a no-brainer. As for the shows in Hollywood, they're having the Jabberwockies. You may have listened to our episode with our good friends Gabe and Nikki from the Theme Park Duo podcast a couple months ago, actually, back when version 1 of the Spec Map came out. They said the Jabberwockies need to Jabberwock on out of here. They're pretty much tired of this show. It was neat when they did it, but they want something different. So unfortunately for Universal Hollywood, they're going to get Jabberwockies again, it seems. But who knows? Maybe something new will come along. Jumping back over to the East Coast over here at Universal Studios Orlando, we actually have 5 scare zones with names now and 2 show names. So this is kind of awesome. So for scare zones, we've got Scare Zone A. Well, Scare Zone K, actually. That's K on the map. The first scare zone as you come in, Production Central. This is traditional Halloween. This is perfect. This is fitting for the event. It is HHN 31, so the overall theme should be Halloween based. Like, this is a big, awesome Halloween year. And the beautiful thing is you're never going to get this again. Like, 31 only comes once. So, 31, it's time. Let's do it. Let's go crazy. This is a great event to really play with the whole Halloween aesthetic. And it's a missed opportunity if they don't go with it. So I'm here for this traditional Halloween thing. Maybe this could be a play on the whole Twisted Traditions thing, I'm thinking. That was my thought process behind this one. I don't know if that's true. If anyone has some thoughts on that, please let me know. But I thought maybe this has to do with Twisted Traditions and is a play on that. So I'd be kind of curious to see what we get with that first zone, but I can just see it now. Pumpkins, big elaborate sets. The parades are finally gone, so the Superstar Parade is no longer happening at Universal. If they want to just leave the parades done for like the rest of the year, that's fine with me, because then they can bring back what used to be these amazing elaborate sets at Halloween Horror Nights. Apparently they used to be huge. I've seen pictures of some of them, and people are begging for these to return. So hopefully that happens. Continuing around to the New York area of the park, we have Candy Mutants. To me, I don't really know about this one. This is kind of an interesting one. Candy Mutants, I don't know what exactly that means. I kind of thought Treeks and Foons were basically Candy Mutants. I sort of thought that was the impression I got. So I'm wondering if Treeks and Foons and Candy Mutants are sort of synonymous sort of thing, and it's more of a red herring to try and throw us off sort of deal. So I don't really know what to say about that. I could imagine maybe Candy Mutants having something to do with kids trick-or-treating, perhaps. I mean, it's right there next to the Halloween scare zone. Maybe the two could interact. I don't know. I'm just spitballing, just coming up with ideas on the fly here. So I don't know. That could be very interesting. I'm curious to see if this one sticks around or how that changes. And so speaking of Treeks and Foons, moving around to Zone M, which is the San Francisco area of the park, we have the Treeks and Foons Scare Zone. This is a scare zone that has been incorporated at the park before, but apparently it was a long time ago. Very long time ago. We're saying like some 20 years or so, I believe is what I heard. So this would be a great throwback scare zone. And we did see Treeks and Foons ever so briefly in the Eddie scare zone last year at HHN 30. So maybe that was sort of, they put them there to kind of gauge a response, see if people would be excited about them. And I believe many people probably were. So maybe we'll be seeing them make their triumphant return in a full scare zone. I'm curious to see how they do this, what we will get, if it will be the same as what it was before, or if it will be drastically different. Moving around the park, around the lagoon, we come over to Central Park, and this is the Scarecrow Zone. So earlier we talked about scare zones becoming houses. This could be the house becoming a scare zone, because we had the Scarecrow the Reaping House back at HHN 27 or 28. I can't remember exactly which year it was, but they had that house. And so this is rumored to basically be going backwards and having this scare zone turned, or this house turned scare zone sort of deal. So that would be kind of neat to see how they do that, how they play with that, what they can do with that. It could be a lot of fun. Definitely creepy. Scarecrows are creepy. And, I love farm sort of aesthetics with corn and tractors and hay bales and that sort of thing. That always is a great traditional sort of Halloween vibe. So I'm down with that. Like, let's see what they can do with it. Finally, as we enter the Hollywood area of the park, we have vampires. Nothing to go off of here, just vampires. I'm down with it. Vampires are great. I heard an interesting theory, like what if this was like a vampire scare zone with vampires from different eras? And I was like, that'd be kind of cool. I'd be kind of okay with that. That'd be really neat. I'd be curious to see how that plays out. Maybe I'm just speculating. Nothing we say is set in stone. Nothing on this spec map has been set in stone. Maybe, we heard an inkling of Midnight Mass. Maybe this is that. Of course, there's also a rumor that Netflix has pulled out of Horror Nights altogether. And with that being said, we might not see any Netflix IPs at this event, or at least until some renegotiations of sorts have been made. So there's no telling. But vampires, definitely an interesting scare zone. I definitely would be curious to see what we get with that and where that goes. So vampires, yeah. So those are our 5 scare zones. All of them, one thing I noticed was they're all very Halloween based. They all have this Halloween aesthetic. They tie in with the theme of Halloween. So all of those paired with, you've got the king of Halloween himself, Michael Myers. You've got a house called Witch House. You've got the Universal Monster Legends collide. You've got potentially Seeds of Extinction. You've got a huge phobia with bugs. Then you've got vampires, which is a great staple. Scarecrows, which are a great staple. Candy, big part of Halloween. Traditional Halloween. I feel like this is going to be a Halloween year. It's got to be. I just don't see how you can do HHN 31 without it being a major Halloween year. So lots of fun stuff can happen here. Very excited to see what Universal does with it. I think they're going to do great things. Then we finally have 2 shows. We've got the Marathon of Mayhem at the Lagoon, which 29 was the first year they did it, and everybody loved it, gawked over it. It was amazing. All I saw was videos, and I wish I could have seen it, but I wasn't able to be there. But I did see it last year at 30, and heard a lot of people say the same thing of it just wasn't as good as the original. It was still good, it just wasn't as good. And I think part of that has to do with the nostalgia factor of it. So I'd be curious to see how it could be improved upon, if it could be improved upon for this coming 31 year. Then we have Nightmare Fuel. This is another one that is very exciting because it was a fantastic show at HHN 30. It was so great. It was explosive. It was magical. It was risque. It was everything you want Halloween themed. It was like just Halloween wrapped up in one nice, neat little bow. It was perfect. So this will be a very well-received welcome back. I think a lot of people are okay with this coming back. I'd be curious to see how they change the show up from last year. See if there even is a way to do that. If there is a way to change it up, and I'd be here for it all day long. I would love to see some just great explosive stuff happening. And this is rumored to be in the old Fear Factor Stadium, the same place it was last year. So that's it. There you have it. The 2 events on both coasts. Great events. I am so excited for both of them. It's going to be amazing. I can tell you already. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Now, we do have an official announcement from one other Universal park around the globe, and it is from Universal Studios Singapore. A park we didn't really get to talk about last year for Halloween Horror Nights, and we didn't get to talk too much about Universal Studios Japan either. But Universal Studios Singapore has announced that they will be returning for Halloween Horror Nights 10 this year. It'll be their 10th year doing the event, and they said Singapore's iconic scare event is back for its 10th year with new hair-raising experiences that will bring your worst nightmares to life. Test your courage at our never-before-seen haunted houses and scare zones. Try to survive a game of laser tag or savor a hauntingly delicious dining experience. Stay tuned. So this event will be happening select nights September 30th through November 5th. So they're going to be doing it on a slightly different time clock than Orlando and Hollywood. They're starting much later than those 2 are, and they're ending about 5 days later as well. So they get a couple extra days, or I guess it sort of evens out in a way because they start later. But yeah, so they officially are back. Now we're just waiting on Universal Japan to see if they're going to come back this year. Right now, the website doesn't say much about it, so it's anyone's guess. But it's great. We've got 3 amazing Halloween events from the Universal Studios company coming this year. It is going to be fantastic. It's shaping up to be a phenomenal year as it is. I am so excited. I hate that I might not be able to make it out to Hollywood, but I'm so glad I'll be able to get down to Orlando and experience it. It's going to be phenomenal. I can already tell everyone is getting hyped from all of the houses that we've seen on the spec maps. From the 2 houses that have already been officially announced, we're hyped about those. We're just dying for more announcements, and they can't keep them coming fast enough. Like we're itching for some more info about what this event will be. So yeah, thank you to Horror Night Nightmares for putting out your speculation maps. Thank you for what you do. We would not have speculation season without you. And so now you can be grateful. Now people will hopefully leave you alone and quit asking for more speculation maps. We got our spec maps, so now we can have a little bit of a break until the next announcements come, or until the full event announcements come. We're getting very close to the month of July now. So unless they do it the way they did it last year, we should start to see announcements start rolling in pretty quick, because we still got 8 more houses to officially announce, 5 scare zones to officially announce, and 2 shows to officially announce. So there's a lot to cover in a very short span of time. We've got the whole month of July, the whole month of August, and that is going to be used for setup time, because that first weekend in September, boom, we're off to the races running. We're going to be there opening weekend. I'm so excited for that. We've already gotten everything sort of worked out for that, plans made, arrangements made. It's going to be absolutely amazing. I know it is. But that is going to do it for us today on this episode of the Terror Talks. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you had a good time speculating with us. I hope you enjoyed our thoughts on the houses. Please feel free to reach out to us and share your thoughts. You can leave them down in the comments below, or you can send us an email to theterrortalks@gmail.com, or feel free to reach out to us on any of our social medias. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. I'm sorry, I blanked there. TikTok, we're on them all. Reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you guys. Be sure to go check out our website, which is in the description below. There you can find all of our reviews from this year, or from the past year leading up to now, and that's where you'll find many more of our haunt reviews as we get back into haunt season coming up real soon. We're going to go around and start ranking our houses again. So excited for that. Lots of fun stuff. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and go follow us on any one of our listening places. Wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, you name it, we're there. Go find us. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you listen to us. If you want to help out the channel a little bit more, give us a little bit of extra help, we do have a special thing that you can do. There's a link down in our description below. If you click on it, it gives you an option to give us a one-time donation of $3. That's it, $3. You click that button, you say, hey, I want to help you guys out, and that is all we ask of you. We don't ask for anything extra. We don't ask you for any sort of subscription, some commitment. It's a one-time payment of $3. That $3 goes directly back into the show to help us continue doing what we are doing, help us buy more equipment, help us to pay our bills to keep the lights on. So you are telling us that you care, that you enjoy the show. So if you can give us that one-time donation of $3, we would absolutely love that. There is an option that you can give a little bit more if you feel so inclined, and we do appreciate that. We do not ask for it. It is always encouraged if you want to help us out, but we do not expect anything from anybody. We understand. So thank you. We just appreciate your support. Finally, we want to thank you. Thank you for being such loyal listeners, for tuning in on our episodes, for liking, commenting, subscribing, for being a part of the Terror Talks family. We could not do what we do without you. You are what makes the show. So thank you so much. Please give yourself a huge round of applause as we do right now. So that is going to do it for us today on this episode of the Terror Talks. We'll see you guys next time. But until next time, be safe out there. Don't text and drive. And be excellent to each other. We'll see you in the fog.